Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, I've seen a few feminist sort of diatribes online where fairly youngish women, say between the ages like early college or even late senior high school, into, say, mid-30s, so say the 17, 18 to 35-year-old range, clearly feminist-type women and indoctrinated women who've been taught absolute nonsense, in fact, the most grotesque amount of lies you can imagine. And they're talking about what life was like in the West, you know, in Australia or Britain, America in the 1970s or 1960s even, or even up until recent times, you know, up until 20 odd years ago, say, and they have the most incredible view. Now, I don't know how people that purport to be speaking on behalf of an entire group of, you know, society, in this case, women, how they can be so ill-informed and why they would want to demonstrate how ill-informed they are on you know, in a national broadcaster or something like that. But here's a woman arguing. Again, she'd be early to mid-30s, quite well turned out. Obviously, she's been to decent schools, and she's talking about how feminism has probably gone a bit too far because it's going to it's morphing into a trans, angry lesbian type movement rather than a movement simply for women. And then she starts to talk about how feminism has done so much for women, because didn't you know that in the 1970s, no woman anywhere was allowed to work. Hitler was personally stopping women from working. They were forced to stay at home in chains, where they were beaten by swastikas every day, and they were just baby-making machines in a patriarchy of misogyny. And women weren't allowed to own anything. Women couldn't go out, and they couldn't go out the front door. They were beaten by multiple swastikas. And this, what? Now, I'm old enough to remember what life was like in the 60s and 70s. So no woman could work. Well, let's deal with that. No woman was allowed to work. The patriarchy stuff. Wait, stop. Where did you get that from? What lies have you been told? I mean, didn't you do any research yourself? So let's have a look at that. Now, when I went to kindergarten, every teacher was a woman. When I went to hospital, every nurse was a woman. When I was at primary school, there was, I went to a number of primary schools, but you know, this is pre-age 11, say. There was either no men as teachers or one, and that was it. And there's usually men who are in unfortunate circumstances. You know, their wife had just died or something like that. So one man or none. So all the teachers were women pretty much. I remember women bus drivers, and in, you know, pharmacies and places like that, the people were all, you know, the people working there were all women. So yeah, I don't know. I don't remember, like in shops, there were women everywhere. I remember the local grocery store, this place where, say, I was 14, 13 or something like that. There was a guy who would, like, you know, take the truck deliveries. That was a man. The manager was typically a man, but everyone else working there was a woman. So this idea that women can, well, where did you get? I mean, who told you that? What are they teaching you? Now, the next thing is women weren't allowed to own anything. That's an absolute lie. You know, I knew plenty of women that owned things and cars and, you know, stuff like that. Then there was no woman was allowed to buy a house. Banks would never loan me. Well, the banks prided themselves back in the day on having very low risk profiles. So a woman was likely to get married and have children and stop working. Therefore, that is a high risk profile. This has been recast as, that's not a risk profile situation. That's fucking Nazi fascist misogyny by Hitler. No. It's just a risk profile thing. Now, credit unions that were in Australia, at least, were very big at the time. They did have a very different risk profile. So they would, and now banks would take a loan from it if the woman had a big enough deposit, because then the risk profile was a non-issue. But if it was at the lower end of the deposit, then it was a higher risk profile if it was a woman in that age. If it was an older woman outside of childbearing age, then the risk profile would change again. But credit unions would happily lend money to women, particularly if they had a government job. So if you were in the public service, you were a teacher, all that sort of nurses, all that sort of thing, they were, easily able to get loans, and many of them did get loans and bought houses. So the idea that a woman wasn't able to get a loan, couldn't buy property or own property, that is again an outrageous lie. There were plenty of women, looking back, they were lesbians. I didn't know they were lesbian, but looking back, I realised they were these lesbian teachers, and they were buying property through